Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode.
Alrighty. Well, we're here with the Dataslate, and there's a lot of changes. And I think there's one dude celebrating hardcore Mexico right now for his Imperial Navy breachers.
Wow, Imperial Navy breachers.
Yeah, there not a lot of teams. There weren't a lot of buffs. It's one of the only teams that got buffed.
Hunter Clade also got a small buff, I think. But this was overall like a data slate where they just went around and just like tapped a bunch of teams on the head, and some of them they gave a big old backhanded slap to, like the Sanctifiers.
Yeah, probably not enough for Sanctifiers, if I had to say.
Yeah, still going to be powerful. It just means that now there's a lot more room for them to get blasted, I think, as they're sticking to the Confessor. Or now maybe you leave the Confessor bubble with a couple people just because you don't want to have the bubble be too easy to blow up.
Yeah, did they? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
So I guess let's go with it this way. When we talk about a team, let's talk about their changes really quick. So Sanctifiers, they now have a 3-inch bubble on Sermon, which is a big change. Before it was a 6-inch bubble. Or it's a 6-inch bubble that you can only move 3 inches from now. So the movement has been drastically changed. So after you do your lead the procession, you won't be able to move as far, which is good. And then the Imperial Cult Devotion, now from the Reliquant, requires visibility. And then the Blaze, which will be similar with no vis hits, now requires you to actually inflict critical damage with your critical successes. Or inflict any damage with your critical successes. So overall, definitely a nerf. Maybe not a big enough nerf because they still got a lot of different layers of defense. Sounds like, Shane, you don't think it's enough nerfs?
Yeah, I think that the biggest problem with the team in my eyes, the movement was, I think that the making it a dash instead of a full reposition on the lead the procession move, I think is a good call. That was probably needed. But I do think the damage reduction being 3 or more damage, reducing to 2, is potentially a little too much. I think there's too many, I think the idea of bolt guns going to 2-3 against a team like that is a little too powerful. And I think it really stat checks too many teams. I don't know. I think that just the degree to which a team can be that tanky is it's maybe a little too much for a team with 11 activations.
Yeah.
There's 10 activations because there's only 10 models that actually tank anything because the Cherub is still pretty easy to kill. But I get what you're saying. They are very tanky still.
Yeah. It's tough because
we did just
shift it by 1 point. The whole thing could maybe fall apart and just be useless just because of the way that breakpoints work. So I don't know, something maybe along the lines of normal damage only, so that crits can still get through. I don't know. That's hardly anything though.
Yeah, if it was 4 or more, then it would still take 3 shots from a bolt gun to kill them, at least, guaranteed. But I don't know. I play a lot of teams with 3/3 weapons, and it's just if those are your main stat lines for your guns, it's I just don't get to kill.
Yeah,
Sanctifiers then.
It's just an entire thing that will just never die. So basically, crew are definitely in trouble there because the 3/3 shotguns definitely are not helped out at all. I guess this is that point on this is a lot of wounds on a lot of activations. I did bring up that Imperial Navy breachers got buffed, and I want to just say basically they just put them to their old wound count. So now they're all the gunners at 9 wounds, the normal guys are at 8, and then the endurance back to 11, which was really annoying in past worlds. So maybe they're back, and also the dice goal is now lethal 4 instead of lethal 5.
I wonder if maybe probably not, but I wonder if maybe Inquisition is looking at these changes since it is a data card change.
Yes, it is a buff to Inquisition agents.
Yeah,
which is funny. To be fair, it's not like they were doing anything in the meta, so I think putting them back to their old threat line, which were a bunch of dudes with a lot of defense, Now they kind of rhyme with Sanctifiers, I think. When you look at the stat lines, they kind of look similar now. So maybe they will be relevant again. Maybe
Yeah, I mean, at least you could view Breacher's Inquisition as kind of like more of a melee tech option. Just with they have a couple good melee guys. You still get another gun. I mean, it was good last edition when Quarry was balanced instead of ceaseless. I don't know if it beats out Castrican, but it's maybe a consideration. I don't know.
Yeah, just floating around with the Endurant can be pretty good, right? On some of those maps, just having the extra dude now with 11 wounds and a 2-up save can be pretty hard for some teams with low armor piercing options.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there.
And even like the team as a broad team, they're just a lot of stats now. You were just saying that Sanctifiers are really annoying to interact with. Breachers still have the damage on 3, so they do rhyme a lot more with Sanctifiers. They just don't have the same movement tricks.
Yeah. Prime had a lot of parallels with Sanctifiers even now.
Yeah, they just don't move as much as the Sanctifiers. Sanctifiers obviously move around a lot better.
I will say also, well, before we move on, Breachers rather, they actually did catch a little bit of a nerf in this data slate because of the change to Severe.
That's true. Okay, that we're talking about specific teams, but we did get a core rules change, and it is kind of a doozy because I think the pair of changes actually has pretty large implications for the elites who have been doing very well, because now they've lost even one more step on close quarters, which is where they were doing the best. So core rules on close quarters, on guard, after you finish guard, you cannot counteract during the turning point. And as an extra thing, fully unrelated to that, severe weapons now do not punish or do not trigger punishing and rending, but they do trigger devastating and piercing crits, which is interesting. So I feel like there's some extra implied wording around how dice are retained, which there is a little bit of rules commentary for. But those are the two broad structural changes. And it does hurt elite-centric teams quite a bit, especially on In the Dark. But I don't really play any of them, so I don't actually know how big it is.
There's actually some of the other teams that it hurts off the top of my head, and there's definitely more than this, but I think it does hurt Scouts. It hurts Exaction really badly. It hurts. Yeah, if you were a weirdo like me and tooling around with Technomancer Higher Attack, I think it really hurts Technomancer Higher Attack, as if you needed any excuse to not take that. And there's a couple the tracker for Jaegers, it hurts him, I believe. And yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a few teams that caught a stray here from that change, and I can't say I love that severe change. I didn't see anybody clamoring for that change. It just seems like an odd one to me, but I don't know.
I feel like the severe change is like future proofing for ruling annoyances, because there is like a lot of weird timing windows around how severe works with the rest of the on retained rules. So I think this is trying to, I don't think they explicitly call that out because there's no specific like ruling wording on it, which is something that Magic the Gathering would do, but we're not there yet as far as games go. So severe had a lot of very messy things. So now I think like the Rekka crew ability to generate Rekka points and use them immediately might actually be gone because of this. Because we were using the severe wording before. Whether or not that's actually functionally true, I don't know. But this could be like a fairly large nerf to Rekkas, because this is the ruling that Rekkas were using to use their Rekka points immediately.
Also, Goremongers literally have a ploy for severe. Like they totally gave them that ploy so that they could proc their rending, and then they're immediately like, actually, no. You don't get that.
Yeah. So like this is like a tiny thing that tries to imply timing changes. And because we were using Severe's wording to trigger punishing and rending in some places, I think that actually does disaggregate those. I kind of wish that it was a little bit more specific, because I really love how this was done, because it does require TOs to, one, care about all of these nitty gritty things, and also to have thought about it instead of just taking it as law from someone else on the internet, which is unfortunately how most people take in rules, I think.
Yeah, I mean, severe and rending is a super... I mean, I think a bunch of people had flagged it as like maybe one of the best offensive output combos in the game. And like one thing, like when I am looking at a new team, I had been being like, okay, is there a severe rending combo around here? Because I'm going to like plan around it and everything. I mean, I don't think it was like to the point where it was ruining anyone's day, but it's suspiciously strong compared to everything else in the game.
Yeah, and then there was a little bit of a rules commentary about how dice are retained, specifically talking about how accurate and rending interact. So if you are retaining something as something, you cannot change that to something else. So if you're using accurate 1 and then a critical success for rending would upgrade something, you can't actually change that retainment to something else. So there is like some timing window that's being implied here. They don't make it explicit because the rules are very much implied and as intentioned. So that is definitely a thing. They do call out that afterwards there are a handful of rules that can change normal success into a critical success, and that's allowed. But I don't love how kind of ambiguous this is.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure about certain things like ambush for Felgors, or like the no kin left behind for Jaegers, where it isn't severe, but you can turn a normal into a crit. Now, because it only calls out severe, do those rules not work for these abilities, or is it just not work for severe? So it's a little head scratching to me. I don't know. It's going to be a confusing one to rule on.
Yeah. And since we're in the hot takes mode right now, I don't actually have a strong opinion yet, so I'll probably have to move around and stare at it for a little bit. But I know since we have the Higher Tech Circle player of the entire length of the podcast, because you've been weirding out on Higher Tech Circle for the better part of 4.5 years, it feels like.
Yeah, you guys
Let's
betrayed me. You got
it.
landed on to talk about Higher Tech. What the heck
Look,
is that?
We gotta be able to make sure that other people can have opinions too, okay?
Unacceptable. No, I love Landon.
All right, so you've been doing a lot with Higher Tech Circle. Obviously, you've been playing them the whole time, and you took a small stint on some of the other elites, but Higher Tech Circle is the name of the game. How do you feel about the changes? Do you feel like it's enough to bring them down? Because they still seem, by first blush, pretty strong. If one of you wants to talk about what changes they got real quick.
Right off the bat, we should say what the changes are. There's 2 changes. And yeah, Shane, I'll leave them to you.
Yeah. So first of all, counteract, or not counteract, Time Splinter. You can't counteract with, or not with Time Splinter. God, let me get my thoughts straight. You can't counteract with command, if I'm not mistaken, which I think was a good thing, because it wasn't like people weren't calling for that, but it was basically just a way to let you counteract with guys that were on conceal, just because a guy that had the command ability was unengaged. And it would just led to confusing situations. And I think it's good to just like get that out of the way. The big meaty changes, though, are to Time Splinter. And so Time Splinter has gone from a 6-inch range on both the pick up a guy and place a guy to a 5-inch range. You can't do it on turn 1, I think. And it doesn't work with comms device. Well, comms device only works for the picking up, not the putting down, which was necessary on some setups, on some like board sides. That was just like egregious. You could just hit their deployment zone. And also, if one of them does Time Splinter, the other one can't. So if the Chronomancer Time Splinters, the Apprentice can't Time Splinter somebody else. It used to just be you can't Time Splinter the same guy. Now you just can't do it twice, period. So those changes really, first of all, it pretty much removes the Alpha Strike, which I think is the most oppressive part off the rip. It was, I mean, even in games where I was playing against like good players and I had no intention of alpha striking, and it would be like 6 activations into the first turn, and it's just the fact that it was technically still possible. My opponent was just like unraveling in front of me trying to avoid getting alpha striked. So the opponent will be able to play a little bit more normally on turn 1 against us, which does have a ripple effect on the way that you're going to play against Higher Tech the rest of the way through a whole game. It's the fact that also you only have to account for it once per turn. Like before, I would get a Time Splinter off and teleport a guy on turn. It would maybe be turn 2, and get a big playoff, and my opponent was still scared about me doing it again with the Apprentice. So that's one less thing they have to respect after turn 1 as well. 5 inches to 6 inches isn't a really big deal in my opinion. It's not super often that you needed the full 6 inches, especially because you're only placing it within 5 inches, not wholly within or anything like that. So that was needed probably just to like get rid of some of the corner cases of like a guy is really getting put far away. It feels like basically 7 inches away. But yeah, I think that, in the context of the rest of this data slate, Higher Tech are still coming out looking really strong. It's just going to feel a little less miserable to play against them. And I will say it's still definitely Chronomancer all the way. There was maybe a world where Technomancer was okay, but
They removed it
I think
by stripping
yeah,
away the ability to go back on counteract, right? So
And like the
losing the ability to
severe
like guard, take
rending
a
going
shot.
away.
that hurts still, yeah. But yeah, no, I still I think I was actually mentally preparing myself to like not play Higher Tech anymore because I just assume every time they get nerfed, they just get like pulverized. So they're definitely
This
still
sucks.
quite good. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna play them a little longer now. But I think they're just long conning me for they're gonna crush them right before Worlds just to
Oh yeah.
the timeline is exact.
Yeah. They'll hit you right before. For my part, Higher Tech Circle are an interesting one because they spike really hard from on random events where good players play them, and then on other times they just kind of like muddle around in the win rates. I do feel like they're very strong, so getting them hit here is good. But compared to some of the other hits on some of the other elite teams, it doesn't really feel like it changes the strong points. Considering that, in my opinion, the comms device thing was supposed to work this way anyways. From the warp coven changes and all the other stuff, now it's just explicit. So I am kind of surprised. Like, I figured that they would get hit a little more, but maybe they're just trying to figure out what else they could realistically hit without like obliterating the team.
Yeah, they've had a hard time getting Higher Tech right, I will say, like from the team's conception.
Yeah.
And they're definitely like they're on the stronger side right now, but I think that has a lot to do with a lot of the other teams got weaker at the same time. So well,
I think okay. We'll swing it around to Goremongers. I think one of the teams that smell kind of like roses after this data slate because all of their biggest hunters have been nerfed pretty heavily, especially their two biggest old stat checks, Angels of Death with Dueler and Plague Marines with Contagion Up, which were two of their big problems before. How are we feeling about the Goremongers, who only got a healing nerf change, which is D3 plus 1 instead of 2D3 now, which is the nerf, but maybe not all that crazy. And they also got their leader nerfed so that he does a normal shrug instead of any type of damage shrug, which ultimately pretty minor.
Yeah,
yeah,
both of these
I
just
think
make
that
it more fun. Like before, if you could shrug anything 2d3, it's like you heal 2 or 3 most of the time, like a lot of the time anyways, and then you just randomly spike, which like from the Goremonger's perspective is kind of a fun little bonus, and from the other person's perspective is just like tedious and annoying. So the fact that it's just kind of like leveled out and it pretty much has all the same effects, but is less annoying, I think is amazing, and I love it so much.
so my hot take a little bit is that I think that I think I would have rather seen the half damage in melee get nerfed rather than the healing. I actually think the healing in a weird it was really good when it popped off, but in a weird way it kind of had like there was like a thought behind it, it seemed, where if you do get a guy down to that minimum 2 health from the 8 damage shot, the 2d3 healing can't possibly get them to a point where they are not killable with a shooting attack. Um, and it felt like that was like an interesting, like that felt like an intentional design choice to me. Whereas the half damage in melee every time you fight, rather than the first time you fight or get a hit in combat, just felt like a little power creepy to me, because every other ability kind of like that tends to only impact the first time a dice attack like hits you, and this would just be in melee, but wherever. So I don't know. I think that and on top of that, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because a lot of their boogeymen got hurt, but also the severe change means that if you don't roll a natural crit when you're fighting a 14-1 model, 3 hits no longer can kill it, because you're only doing 13 damage with the crit and 2 hits. So you need a natural crit, or you're like more necessitated to like rake when you charge and fight a 14-1 model. But I don't know, maybe it's okay. Like Plague Marines no longer just like saying no, you don't get to beat us, and Dueler kind of the same thing is that's a great thing. I think for the game as a whole. And I'm curious to see if Goremongers still perform, I guess, after these changes.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would be surprised if the Warmongers don't come out a lot better in this patch, right? Because, obviously, if the elites are worse, that means that the elves are a little bit better, and that means that the hordes are a little bit better. And if there's anything that Goremongers want to fight, it's hordes and other elves.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, the whole reason that I stepped away from Goremongers was Plague Marines. So these other changes, again, that knock them down a peg, I think don't even deter me at all, and I'm a little more interested, significantly more interested in Goremongers once again.
Yeah, and I suppose I'd be remiss if I didn't call out that all of these classified teams who got changes this patch, maybe they won't Legends these teams. Maybe they will actively keep getting changes because Novitiates and Pathfinders both got nerfs, and Hunter Clade actually got a fairly large buff, I think, which is kind of interesting. Was there a specific one of these three theoretically classified teams soon that you guys were interested in?
No, not for me. I mean, the Novitiate nerf was just kind of a stray for consistency's sake with Blaze from the Sanctifier nerf.
It's just like you gotta actually hit with the crit to get anything. And then on the Hunter Clade, now you get 7 choices instead of 5, I think, which means that you can take all of your Gunners and all your Sicarians now, which is a pretty large change.
Kind of a plasma spam. That's kind of like the Kill Team 18. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember this at all, but AdMech was one of the teams back then that could take like 1 million plasma guns. And obviously you're not taking all plasma guns, but having that many piercing weapons does kind of remind me of the old days of Kill Team First Edition. I mean, and they also got rid of one of the deprecations on one.
They got rid of the damage on the Omnisize Imperative. So before, you would basically juice your Doctrine for one character a turn, and you would take damage for it, which was rough, but they've removed that. So basically, Hunter Clade got all of their limiters removed. So now you just take whatever you want, and also you won't take damage when you basically juice your ploy. And that ploy is really good. Double hit with any of your crazy melee operatives is really big. Being able to do all this other crazy stuff. Let me double check and remember exactly what it does, because it is a big buff. So you can have a better save, you can ignore the first 2 inches of movement, you can double hit in melee, and you can have severe with shooting. And severe shooting with these Pierce 2 or Pierce 1 guns, pretty good. So it is a pretty large buff to Hunter Clade on a team that basically me and Jason have seen in the stats is like 20%, 30% week to week. Like, they've just been terrible. So maybe it's time for the handful of AdMech players, I guess Liam in Australia, if you're listening, time to let us know if Hunter Clade is good again.
And then also Novitiates, I just want to say I think they're another team that got hurt by the severe change. Now that I'm going to keep thinking of teams that hate the severe change as we go deeper into the episode.
Teams that clearly had some power in severe with some other stuff, so they're getting hit pretty hard. Pathfinders also caught a nerf, mostly on the Grav drone, where now the Grav drone I can't exactly tell when I read it if it's actually a nerf to the Grav drone or if it's just a change in how they're writing the rules to make it a little bit more obvious how it works. They did remove part of the Alpha Strike with Recon Sweep now being struck from the first turn. And then the Grav drone, which was probably one of the more important operatives in this edition of the team, now excludes dashing, which is a pretty big nerf to it. And then all things count as an extra 2 inches outside of obstructing inaccessible terrain. So overall, a pretty major nerf to any Alpha Strike potential, even though if you go up to the midline, they can still absolutely nuke you. But overall, a little bit less annoying. You can go up 6 inches now, but if you go up 9, you're gonna get shot at.
Yeah, they really jumped on that Alpha Strike. Everybody kind of talked about it at first.
Yeah, we were on the Alpha Strike meta, I think, discussion-wise. And I guess, talking about one of the Alpha Strike teams we haven't really touched on so far, Brood Brothers also got a little tap. Just a little bonk on the head for both the Primus, the Magus, and Insidious, I believe.
Yep.
Bringing them down in line with everything else. And the Icon, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why the Primus. I don't understand why they nerfed the Primus. Like, the Magus, I totally got. That felt needed. But the Primus is Are people really like taking the Primus a lot? I haven't seen it much. Every time I see Brood Brothers, it's always pretty much Magus all the way.
I've
seen it a couple times, but it's mostly against like I don't actually know if it's correct. I've seen it a couple times. I just don't know if it's good. But let's just talk about the changes really quick. Insidious cannot be used on the first starting point. Helps reduce some of the alpha strike.
Yeah,
Icon
Insidious
ward
was the dash.
now requires visibility. Yep. And then the Magus, now you select one of his pieces of text. So you can do ignores injury, ignores piercing, or ignores APL, I think. Those are like the 3 lines. And then the Primus, who's your melee small guy, not your big patriarch, can now only use each of his abilities once a battle. So he's got to pick.
Yeah, I think that
Brood
is a pretty strong team, and I think it's kind of for the best that they caught this nerf. I mean, they seem to really hate the alpha strike potential on a lot of these teams. I'm kind of surprised that Corsairs didn't have their alpha hit because they're one of the better ones. But this definitely seems to be like a gear.
That's true.
Yeah, they're kind of targeting alpha strikes, which I'm personally okay with that as a design philosophy.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, losing some of these alpha strikes, really all it's doing is like a knowledge check where someone like lines up to a table and then they play a 20-minute game. They're like, okay, I guess I'll go home now, which is not the experience you want for people to interact with. They design philosophy-wise, we're trying to get away from it. And now they kind of have, but you're right. Corsairs still mostly have it untouched, and that's still pretty good. Primus getting changed here is weird because I don't think anyone really cared, but maybe Brood Brothers just needed a light tap across the head, across the board. I do think that this makes the Magus a lot worse, although you basically do just select whatever's good, and then he's still really annoying on -1 APL with visibility at max range, and then just deleting people with a silent gun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
maybe it
like,
makes
that
the
combo
Patriarch a
hasn't
little
gone away.
more valid as well. Other 2 options are knocked down a notch. Maybe the Patriarch is worth taking another look at.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe we'll see a little more Patriarch. It's that'd be something.
Yeah, it's time to let him out of the box. And then, I've been delaying it this whole time because there's so many changes to all of the elites, and I really don't want to go over all of them. But for the most part, all of the elites got hit pretty hard. We talked about Angels of Death and Plague Marines a couple times, so let's talk about them specifically for a second. Angels of Death, their most important, always pick Chapter Tactic Jeweler, has now been not removed, but definitely hurt quite a bit.
Yeah, I was hoping they would nerf Dueler specifically. Honestly, the nerf to Dueler was exactly what I hoped would happen. I'm happy about that. But I was hoping they would buff something else about Chapter Tactics. But they didn't. I mean, I don't know. It's that one.
So Dueler, for anyone who hasn't looked or hasn't had time to look, they've removed the ability for you to double parry, which, important. And then for both of the sergeant types, now you can do the free doctrine once a battle. So now basically you've stripped away 3 CP from the team, although generally you weren't getting much use out of the doctrine on first turn. And then the heavy intercessor got a little buff. He moves 5 inches instead of 4.
Well, congratulations, Heavy Intercessor.
Yeah, I actually know a lot of people that have been like swearing by the heavy intercessor. So I don't know. Maybe that's maybe there's something there.
Secretly,
Maybe they're
surprisingly good melee piece because he's just so chonky, and like the tilting shield still rocks. You can just like wheel over to someone that is low on HP, beat them to death, maybe take a hit or 2 back, and then if you can still fire a heavy bolter because it's not heavy, you can get some juice out of that.
Yeah, I guess the 7 and 8 wound teams, he could theoretically win a fight and then just let loose with a heavy bolter. And now he's got a 7-inch charge instead of a 6-inch charge.
It's pretty significant.
Yeah. And then the Plague Marine change.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, and then the Plague Marine change is a big one. It's only one line, but that one line has massive implications.
I love it.
Same.
So basically, Contagion used to be, if you're within control range of Plague Marines, you get -1 to hit. Now, that first line of text is gone. So you got to have the poison on for it to count. So if you're not poisoned, there's no Contagion, which honestly, for all the melee-centric teams in the game who are just hardcore stat checked by the Plague Marines, that you now have a game plan. You can skirt around them. You can go into melee on your being proactive and hit them. There's actually an opening now. I haven't really played Plague Marine, so I don't have a strong opinion on how much this actually matters, but I do get the sense that this is the big one.
I did play Plague Marines for about a month straight, like a couple months ago. I think that this change, first of all, I think it was needed. I think the team was too gatekeepy and kind of impossible to balance against certain teams with the way that Contagion worked before. But now, I think for the Plague Marine players, first of all, you got to take the icon. It's not even optional anymore. It's technically optional, but because he's the only way you can poison or you can Contagion a guy that isn't poisoned. And then on top of that, the importance of the Plaguecaster getting his poison out and like maybe staging a little more aggressively to get within 7 to get a poison out is more important now. So you just got to get the
plan to get your rules out, right? Whereas before you could just be like, well, I'm just gonna stand in this box and you'll lose.
Yeah.
Now you actually have to like have a plan. So I think that's probably good.
Melee teams can play into them now.
Yeah. And all the other elite teams got nerfs. The Night Lords actually got a lot of nerfs. So Nemesis Claw had Midnight Clad expand from a 6-inch to an 8-inch bubble. They lost the ability to take a full move when they're doing that strat ploy movement. And I think there was
and then
prescience
it's 4 inches instead of 6.
Prescience tokens are now per turn. So you got to use it or lose it, which is huge.
Really big, yeah. The Nemesis Claw player, turn 1 is still going to be pretty. It's going to be like pretty. You just use what you have, obviously. But after turn 1, you actually have to make some choices. Like if you don't get, if you only have 2 prescience tokens, if you want to use your pass, you're either not getting a CP or you're not going to have your Justice Crouch in your leader in case he gets hit later. So, they have to make some tough choices a little more frequently, I think. And also like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that like my overall thought for the changes so far on elites is now the free stuff that the elites were getting have now been reduced to like actual choices, which I think structurally for like player choice, I think is better because elites had a lot of free stuff. Like looking at how Angel of Death used to play, it's like everyone always took Dueler and you always take a Sergeant because you just hit the Doctrine every turn. So now there's actually like you got to make a choice and you have to live with the ramifications of those choices, which I kind of like.
The captain is way more in line with the sergeants now, and now I'm like, okay, I'm willing to think about the captain now for Angels.
Hey, for some of us, the captain was always the choice. So
that's true, yeah.
I was always going captain.
The captain is cool as hell.
Yeah, he is very cool. I just love Justice Scratch on a big chunky guy like that. I honestly, beyond those for AOD, Legionary kind of got put out to pasture, right? I don't know. What do you guys think?
They got hurt. They got hit pretty hard. Like, I don't know why Khorne needed to catch a nerf. I guess, they were able. So one of the big changes, I guess, Khorne no longer can do 8 damage on a hit. It's capped at 7 now. And then Implacable, I don't think had any actual changes. And then Fickle Fates, which was basically the silent buff from the last changeover, is now balanced flat. That can get some boost, right?
Implacable had a big change, right? I think you only ignore injury if you're Nurgle, right?
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay.
So like they no longer they no longer ignore injury team wide on everybody, like unless you're Nurgle, which Nurgle's the worst one. So, I don't know. I think that these changes are just like is already getting hard to justify taking Legionary over like Nemesis Claw, in my opinion. Or I don't know any elite team really, other than maybe AOD. And I don't see them getting picked competitively for the rest of their like lifespan with these changes.
Yeah, Legionary definitely are a weird one because they look a lot less powerful than Angels of Death just because you have to make so many choices up front. And originally when the edition started, we're like, oh, they're clearly the best one because they can ignore all this stuff. So now, which marks you're taking is way more important.
Yeah, it's wild how much weaker they are than the release version of this team. Like if you just compare it, like a lot of teams obviously have changed quite a bit since the start of the edition. But man, Legionary are like a shell of what they were at the start for sure. They were crazy
To be
strong.
fair, it's probably better that we're at where we are now compared to where we started. But yeah, that's the delta is massive.
Yeah,
Warp Coven also caught a small nerf where their sorcerers, Kopesh, I think, which is their more melee, or is their psychic option, is now 4 attacks with balance instead of 5 attacks without balance. So now you can take the melee guy, and his melee side is 5 attacks, but his psychic weapon is only 4, if I remember correctly.
The
And then
Kopesh, I think,
also-
is the power weapon. I think.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then, I'll pour one out for all the Warp Coven players who are left, who have been doing well. So, 4 attacks and balance. So, Prospering Kopesh. Melee option? Question mark? Knows how good my memory is at this point.
I mean, it's basically like it makes the choice between a Kopesh and a stave a little more relevant because the Kopesh, you're not losing an attack by taking a stave anymore. You're losing, the 4/6 lethal 5 instead of 4/5. I think a stun or shock rather. I think is what it is.
Yeah, you trade out less reliable weapon with shock for a more reliable weapon with higher damage output. And because now you're not at 5 attacks, that choice is much more stark. And it also means that sorcerers are not just going to be casually rolling around fighting other elites or other, melee specialists and getting away with it for free. Because 5 attacks on 3s is pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah,
Especially with balance because of the Psychic Cabal or whatever, your strat play ability, which also got a little tap on this change. So now it doesn't give ceaseless, it only ever gives balance.
Yep.
Or the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, not Cabal.
Yeah, I don't know. This might this is definitely a pretty meaningful nerf to Warp Coven. I mean, now that we know that the season 1 teams are going to be legal for Worlds.
Did they say that in the patch?
It was in the article. It pretty explicitly states that the rotation is going to happen until after the World Championships.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, if this is the patch for Worlds, I mean, I'm reasonably happy with how things are overall. Maybe a handful of these teams are going to be a little bit too strong. Jason, did you want to bring up the Phobos changes really quick? Because I don't.
Oh, the Phobos change is super chill. Deadly shots. Basically, you would get a reroll if you either haven't moved or the opponent is not in cover. But now, for the portion that is the opponent is not in cover, they also need to be more than 6 inches away. I mean, the way that I was playing Phobos was ways away a lot. I mean, it is definitely really strong to shoot people within 2, and now you're going to lose your reroll if you move to get within 2 to shoot. And that is actually pretty impactful because that gives you way less power to just like blitz up on people and then just like 3 crits in a hit, piercing, shoot people. It's way how to reroll.
Yeah,
but
pretty.
Otherwise, you can still just shoot them from across the map, and you still get all your rerolls. And that feels very Phobos to be just like taking cross map shots and sniping people at crazy angles.
Yeah, I think in the context, especially of like all the other elites getting nerfed, Phobos definitely needed something. They've kind of been like the best team in the game to not receive any nerfs since the start of the edition, I think.
Yeah.
But it was always not very obvious to me what they should nerf, and I think this was a good choice.
Yeah, I agree. The Incursor kind of insane.
Yeah,
and,
I was kind of
expecting
him to
have some insane things just because elites overall were really bad in the last edition, so having a couple crutches, and also it's one of those design things I think for newer players, like having operatives that are obviously strong just makes teams a little bit easier to get a handle on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had asked me before this Dataslate, like what do I think should get nerfed about Phobos, I would have probably said marksman hitting on 3s, but I mean they're not going that route, and I think that what they've done here is pretty much fine.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I would have said the same thing.
Yeah,
I think that's basically all of the changes. If I were to give a quick summary from my perspective, it's that the meta is in a pretty good spot. They hit all the elites because the elites are a little bit too easy to play. So, and also all of the alpha strikes. That was kind of this patch. I don't know what you guys are thinking.
Except for Corsairs.
Except for Corsairs, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
like a
think that
slap shot.
the meta that like I don't think the tier list changes a ton personally after this data slate. It was kind of like there was a couple buffs here and there, but it was mostly a data slate of nerfs. Where I think like the elites got hit pretty hard, and the very top teams, which I think were like higher tech and sanctifiers, are not like I don't see them like meaningfully falling like down tiers personally. I think like maybe you see teams like Raveners be a little bit more like relevant in the meta, um, more so than they already were going to be. Um, but yeah, I mean it's not a huge set of changes, honestly. All things considered, I feel like this is one of the less insane data slates we've ever had.
Definitely true. Which makes a lot of sense because like none of the stats were. There wasn't anyone that was like consistently blowing everyone out of the water in the stats.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the only team that was I don't like pay close attention to stats, but if I recall, Warp Coven is kind of like always in first in stats like that I see. But that's been like from day one. So I don't know if these changes are going to knock Warp Coven down, but I don't know. Maybe.
Definitely hurt then. I think this one will definitely be meaningful. It just brings down their reliability quite a bit. Because now they don't have 5 attack operatives. It's just going into melee. You could just under roll and just die now, which is not a thing that was possible with 5 attacks, really.
Yeah, it's also harder for them to like parry out if they get charged.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
It just makes them much less reliable in melee in all senses. Do we want to do a quick little like winners and losers? Because by my eyes, all the elf teams basically got off this one scot free.
I think the biggest winner is Blades of Cain. And I think I would almost put them as like an S tier team now. Maybe.
Ooh, yeah. The big winners can obviously be the ones that weren't touched at all.
Yeah.
And Blades of Cain are really, really good. And with Plague Marines coming down a notch, that's another one that just like helps them a lot.
Well, it's just like now all of the hunting grounds for the elf teams is much, much wider, right? Because before they were good against elites, but you could still just lose because an elite managed to line up 2 kills on a guy and suddenly you're playing from behind. That's not really the case right now because now they're much more susceptible to getting poked at the edges for. So Corsairs obviously come out better. Hand of the Archon, even though they got nerfed, they're still really reliable. They hit on 2s. You got Void Dancers out there who still have not really crashed in win rate after literally all of their rules got removed. Still lots of strong
Void
teams on the
Dancers.
elves.
The biggest win for Void Dancers today is finding out they're not rotated for Worlds for all the Void Dancer players.
This is, I mean, since we'll be at Worlds, I'll be as a TO and Shane, you'll be there as a player. This is kind of a hot patch for Worlds. They basically said that this is what it's going to be. And that means that we're going to have like 40 some odd teams at Worlds, and it's going to be a big deal.
Too many teams. I was actually excited for there to be less teams at Worlds. But I mean, here we are. I guess it'll be we'll see what the last, because I think we are expected to have one more data slate before Worlds, but it's going to cut pretty close, right? Because Worlds is the first week of November.
It'll probably be, like the Raveners and like the last couple things. I get the sense that they might, like the teams will be legal, so knowing that teams are going to be legal is a big thing. So yeah.
Strike Force Varial.
Yeah, except for Strike Force Varial, who's going to come out before Worlds, it sounds like now, because now they haven't told us, but they definitely said that they're not going to be part of the classified format. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get one more set of boxes. No new teams after that. So we'll get Deathwatch and we'll get Necrons probably, because I would expect that they're going to be out before November, considering that most things come out about 3 months after the previews, and we just got previews last week. So it'll be like mid-October, and I would assume that they make it into the early November cut for Worlds.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel relatively positive about this overall set of changes, mostly because I thought the meta was in a pretty healthy spot. Like, it didn't really seem like anything was overperforming that consistently, and teams that had players who were the main pushers, Blooded would be one of those where like they generally do bad, but one guy on the Pacific Northwest does really well with them, pushes them up for a week. So there's a lot of that floating around because the game is still pretty small. Basically, all of those teams who had like individual pilots, they didn't get changed, so they have more room to see play.
Oh, I think another big winner is Akalans. I think they were one of the strongest teams that didn't get changed.
That's true. And I mean, to be fair, they were pretty good against elites already, anyways, with all the Pierce 2s. But definitely, their hunting grounds have also gotten a lot easier. So anyone who didn't get touched, basically, you got buffed because this was just a patch of getting hit on the head.
Except for Kasserkin.
Yeah.
Maybe they're one of the big losers because they're still a bit in the struggle town.
Yeah, unserious team, Kasserkin. I just can't believe they didn't get buffed.
Same.
All right. Well, Shane, thanks for hopping on and doing a quick little Dataslate podcast with us, just because it's fun to talk about. And we appreciate you coming on. For anyone who doesn't know where Shane is, check him out on Command Point, although I'd be hard pressed to find someone who listens to us who also doesn't know who you are.
If you're not on the Command Point Discord, get on there. There's a lot of conversations.
True. It's the place to be. All right, you guys, jumping in right away to let you know about the Battle Box from Crossfire Games. This thing absolutely rocks. It holds everything, all of your tokens, cards, miniatures, scorecard, dice tray, and everything. Super incredible. I am very jazzed about it, and you should be too. Check it out. We've got a link in the show notes, and you can pick one up for yourself.